If I did not believe in the power of prayer, what would you tell me?
Well, I'd say we experienced it firsthand. Throughout the journey, there were a number of instances in which we could clearly see people praying, and we could clearly see prayers being answered.
It's funny to look back on those pictures now because it's like, wow, we had no clue what was coming.
I had a headache just all day pretty much, but I was like, it's just a headache. But for some reason I couldn't shake it.
And even that evening after we got there, Hannah wasn't feeling great.
When I woke up Monday morning, it was really bad. I laid on the couch with a bag of ice on my head.
We're unfamiliar with the area. We don't know where the Minute Clinic is. Her dad, he said, there's not really any Minute Clinics, but there's a new pediatric hospital just in Fort Myer. I would just take her there.
But I couldn't bring myself to stand up. So my dad was like, you know what, I'll just carry you to the car. He picks me up and I just vomited. I couldn't really move even then because I felt so sick. Probably the last thing I remember is vomiting in the ER. After that, I don't remember anything.
He said, I really think we need to consider doing a spinal tap. I think she's exhibiting the signs of meningitis. And of course, at that point, we were like, whoa, that seems very invasive. This is pretty serious. And we weren't sure we wanted to subject her to that. So as the night progressed, she became incoherent. Her thought processes were very strange, and she wasn't able to answer questions intelligibly. And at that point, he said, I'm going to do this one way or another, whether you consent or not. So at that point, we thought, okay. Within 15 minutes, they were back. And he said, look, she has meningitis, and we're getting ready to admit her into pediatric intensive care.
There was one specific nurse, he was the guy who had started her IV. I just remember the look in his eyes when we left the ER, and we were walking beside her bed as we went through the hall and up the elevators. And the concern in his eyes scared me.
Yeah, I remember looking up at the heart monitor, and her pulse was in the 30s. It was plummeting, and we happened to be talking to a nurse practitioner, and she immediately sprung into action. She kind of grabbed Hannah, slid her up into the bed, reached over and grabbed an oxygen line off the wall, stuck it up underneath her nose. And she was saying, Hannah, stay with me, Hannah, stay with me, Hannah. And then they quickly took us out, and I mean, everybody on the entire floor descended into the room.
But it was at that moment that I called my sister and I said, you need to call everyone you know.
The next couple days, she actually seemed to improve. They took an MRI and said, this looks pretty good. We think we can prepare you to leave. We're coming back
The
up.
infection was there, but it didn't damage your brain.
But then it was Friday morning when she would not wake up. They had to put her in a medically induced coma. That feeling was the hardest feeling, and that moment was the hardest moment of my entire life. That medical staff came rushing into the room. They actually performed that surgery right there in the room. They took me out to sign. They took her to another room, and
I remember the nurse literally carrying me down the hall. I know that I collapsed in her arms. I mean, I don't know, it was the strangest feeling ever. It was literally like, I can't move. And she wrapped her arms around me and carried me down the hallway.
They took me to the nurse's station, and they said, you need to sign the consent form, but you can't just sign your name. You need to write out exactly what we're going to do and what you're consenting to. And I remember picking up that pen and trying to hold it steady enough to write. And I had to write, they're going to drill a hole in her head and attach a brain probe to measure the pressure and then sign my name. Every time there was a good thing, there would be immediately followed by 1 to 2 bad things. I can remember days where they came in and said, look, we think she has blood clots in her feet. We're a little concerned by some of her liver enzymes. There might be a possibility for kidney stones, and they just rattled off like 4 things. And we walked out into the hallway and we said, how much more can we take? And it was just, so overwhelming.
I don't think we'd been out of the room, really, the hospital, not out of the hallway at least. So we knew she was there, that nothing was going to happen. She was in a medically induced coma. Let's go take a walk. And I just remember standing there, and in my stomach, I was like, Lord, I don't want to say these words out loud, because it's almost like even though I've thought them in my head, when I speak them out loud, they become more true. I turned and looked at Scott and I said, have you come to the point where you can say to the Lord, it's okay if he takes her home to be with him? And he looked back at me and he said, yes, I have. That was our moment of complete surrender, where we were like, she's not ours, Lord. She's yours. And at that moment, I honestly, truly thought he was going to call her home. I really did. It was after that difficult day, and it still seemed like it was not going well. And I thought he's going to take her home. And this is where I have to decide that I'm not going to be mad at him if he does. Because he's sovereign, and he has that choice, and he's still good.
The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Lift up Hannah and ask that
It's hard for you, and we're praying that God will give you patience.
And Hannah, Leah, we wanted you to know that we missed you.
pray for Hannah every night? What do you ask God?
It feels really weird, like, did it really happen? Like, how could life be if God hadn't healed me all the way? And sometimes I take it for granted. And the battle was really hard waking up, but a lot of times I just kept thinking I missed out.
At some point, we have to integrate the stories that the reason she even got meningitis is because of her CVID.
So what we didn't know about Hannah is that she doesn't have a complete immune system. There are 5 different classes of antibodies that your body will produce. It turns out Hannah is completely deficient in all classes. So her body doesn't produce antibodies. But ultimately,
That answered all of our questions
That answered
over why
all of our
she'd
questions,
been so
right?
sick over the last 3 or 4 years.
there's no cure for it, but they can treat it, and they treat it by giving her antibodies from other people's blood.
And that's what IVIG
And
is.
that's the IVIG treatment that she received. So she takes other people's antibodies as a means of fighting off infections.
If the ENT hadn't done the tests when he did, the nurse got them there when they did, they figured it out quickly. They administered that IVIG. Once we reached Miami, they gave her yet even another one. So even as she was having those bad days, she'd had these 2 IVIG treatments that were already starting to build her immune system. The Lord ordained weeks before for the doctor to do that blood test, for us to know that, to be able to say that, for that treatment to be able to come to save her life.
After they were able to bring her out of the coma Tuesday morning, so it had been a week and a couple days, she was responsive enough that we could at least engage her in conversation. I couldn't wait to tell her she was in Miami, and she and I kind of have this fetish for Will Smith rap. I wanted to play his song. He's got a song on there called Welcome to Miami. And so I couldn't wait to play that song, and so I said, "You're in Miami," and her eyes got real big. And so then he has another song that she really likes, and so after I played Welcome to Miami, I thought, I got to play this other song. So I started playing it. And she actually began mouthing the words to it.
Look at that. Oh my God.
This year's American Music Award goes to...
I was FaceTiming my cousin, and he was wearing a purple and blue bracelet. And I had never seen it before. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, well, it's your bracelet. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, someone had these made. It has your favorite verse on it, and with the lifting up Hannah. And I was like, I have a bracelet?
We started getting notification that people from Brazil were praying and people from countries all around the world were praying. When we told her of the number of people that were praying for her and the videos that we would get and all of this, she broke down and cried. And she said, I can't believe people love me this much.
My English teacher stopped class and they went into one of the rooms and they FaceTimed me, which was really, really cool because I really love my class and it was awesome to get to see them.
Local cheerleaders from the local Christian school found out and came and visited her, and we got connected to a local pastor at the church. And
When he was there a half a dozen times, the arms of the body of Christ reached all the way down to Florida and provided, again, complete strangers with meals at the hospital.
It took me a little while to figure out I couldn't move my arms and legs. They would just be like, okay, next time, you know.
You're sitting here thinking, she's 15, she's a teenager. How is this gonna change her life? As each movement came, you know, it was a grip one day, and then the next day it was lifting the arm off the pillow.
There were definitely those days when I was just like, no, I don't want to do it. Please don't make me do it. And they were like, well, you have to.
And the steps, I'll never forget those first steps she took. She was hanging on her daddy's neck.
It was like watching your one-year-old take her first step. You know, I was so proud of her when she would go out into that hallway and I'd hear those nurses saying, hey, good job, you did it, look at you go. And I would just beam from ear to ear, thinking, wow, this is amazing, she did it, you know.
My best friend, Jenna, I had missed her 16th birthday, but I wasn't gonna be out of Riley in order to make it to her party. I was like, Mom, I don't want you to tell anyone that I'm home till I get to tell them. They pick up the phone and my heart rate like skyrocketed. Like to the fact that it set off the alarm in the hospital room because I was so excited to see them. And so the nurse comes in to make sure everything's all right, and then she just kind of grinned when I looked up at her and I was like, I'm FaceTiming my friend. And I said, Rocky, will you come over here? And I said, I want to show you guys the uniform that my nurse is wearing because it's super cool. So I turned it around and showed them the little Riley symbol. Everyone just like erupted, and I could hear someone go, it means she's at Riley, she's home.
You know, I don't want to make light of Seth and Rachel in this either, and everything that they had to endure. It was so hard, and then they had to come back here without us. And when I look at what this did for our family as a whole, you know, they were there at physical therapy. They were doing those exercises with her, and they wanted to be.
I went through this, I experienced it, and now here I am closing this chapter and kind of opening up a new one. Having my classmates and my fellow students do what they did that night totally blew my mind. You know, I cried then, and it was so neat.
You know, our own church and school and the way they came around her and supported her, and that special night that they did for her. I mean, like who does that? The community of the Christian school all together, that's a gift.
Mom, it's production week. We're supposed to be putting on a play. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm not there. And she told me, she said, well, they decided not to do it this week. And I was like, what? And she was like, they pushed it back. They're not going to do it till you get home and you get better. And I just never dreamed that they would stop the whole thing just for me.
I shall never forget you, shall I?
She's a happy, healthy teenager, active, singing, acting, playing the piano, studying, reading, driving. Amazing. Amazing.
If you criticize my faith, I'm gonna defend it because I know it's true and I know it's real, and this is just one of those things where like it's proof. Like I don't understand how you couldn't believe in a God that's amazing, that he's real, that he loves someone small enough like me to save me. You can rely on him. He's gonna be there no matter what. In the darkest times and in the great times, there are so many memories, whether good or bad, that I have now, and I wouldn't trade them for the world.